Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of News Bants with myself, Bianosa Bite.
And me, Paul Nezandonyi.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, B. I am feeling jolly. How are you?
Oh, jolly!
Yeah.
Wow, that is something. Considering we are in COVID era, why are you so jolly? Not that I mean to say that you shouldn't be jolly, but why are you jolly,
Yeah,
Paul?
well, we're only in tier two, and we've finally come out of this second lockdown, and Christmas isn't far away. The tree is up, the decorations are up. So, yeah, things are hopefully looking good. But as we'll talk about, maybe not for long.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll give you that, Paul. And you're
How are
in a
you
red.
doing?
You're in a red top as well. That's very Christmassy.
Yeah, Santa's on
It's
his
not.
way. I'm ready to welcome
Yeah.
him.
Okay, if you say so. If you say so. Well, there's a few things we want to talk about today. We're going to start off with what's going on with Croydon Council. I must declare an interest first of all. So I am a Croydon resident, so I live in the borough of Croydon. So declaring an interest there. But what we wanted to talk about, and people have probably heard about this on the news, certainly because it has hit national news headlines, and that is Croydon Council are the second, I think, in a 20-year span, local authority that's had to declare itself effectively bankrupt and issue a Section 114 notice, which is terrible for a local authority to do because essentially, as I said, it means that the local authority is essentially bankrupt. It has to go cap in hand now to central government to essentially bail it out. And, services and provisions that the council provides are under threat to all of us who live in the London Borough of Croydon. And, for me, it's quite disheartening that it's come to this situation because there are a lot of warnings that were issued to the council by their auditors, Glenn Thornton, way back about the situation that the finances were in. As a local authority, their reserves were really low. They had about 8.1% reserves, and if you compare that to the median of other local authorities in London or other local authorities, it's generally around 37%. So a big difference. And they were warned. So they were warned numerous times, basically, about things that they were doing which would lead to detrimental effects for the public purse, and they ignored them. And sorry, I'm going on here because I feel very passionate about this, but they ignored them. And Grant Thornton said that there is collective corporate blindness to both seriousness of the financial position and urgency with which actions needed to be taken. And as a result, the local authority really essentially played a monopoly with public money. They did things like buy a hotel, and other things, a shopping centre, and just made lots of terrible choices which have left us in this state. Over to you, Paul, before I continue with my rant.
Oh, I think it is really saddening. I think I'd say it was disgraceful actually. There were warning signs, like you said. It's not that this has happened suddenly that they can blame it even on COVID. And there have been years of austerity. The public purse has been cut, but I do think there were serious mishandlings of Croydon money. And I think if I was a Croydon resident, I would want to know who is to blame and who's taking whose head's going to roll for this. And the thing that I'm surprised by is that no one's head does seem to have rolled for this. No one seems to be actually standing up and saying it's my fault, or it's the fault of our, the collective cabinet's fault. So we're all going to step down, and this is the worst time for something like this to happen at a time where we're really seriously relying on the public purse. I just think they've had the warnings. They could see this coming. The auditors had been warning them, and this is, I think it is disgusting. And and I know a lot of people on the opposition, Labour support, Tory supporters, have been saying, this is what happens when you let Labour in charge of economies, when you give them public money. And I wondered what your view of that was. is this just a simple case of local Labour incompetence, or is this a warning of what happens when Labour run economies? And is it a warning for us on a national level? You'll recall that when Labour left power locally, they left that note saying all the money's gone. Isn't this a really scary indication of where we could be?
Wow. Okay, that's interesting that you posed that to me, and I'm going to try to be as objective as I can, as I usually am, Paul, on matters such as this. I don't. I blame the individuals. I don't blame collectively. Of course, it was a party, and it was the Labour Party in Croydon that is at fault, of course. But I blame individuals for making those terrible mistakes and terrible decisions. I blame the culture that was obviously spearheaded by the leader of the council, and the culture that existed within that cabinet that prevented people from actually doing their jobs, speaking up, calling things out, and actually not being afraid to do that. So I don't think you can pinpoint this and say this is Labour Party. This is the fault of the individuals who are labelled Labour individuals. I don't think it's also an indication of, nationally, if Labour was to take control, Croydon Council is an example of what would happen nationally. I don't think that's the case. Like I said, it's the individuals who were A, incompetent, B, made awful decisions, C, didn't listen to advice and warnings that were given. And, I know that all local authorities were under extreme pressure and have been under extreme pressure. And obviously, what happened in Croydon is not the fault of COVID, because as you say, you're correct. These warning signs were issued, many years ago, and they were ignored. And COVID essentially was the straw that broke the camel's back. So individuals are to be blamed. Individuals need to be punished. And you're right, for me, as a local resident, if you think about this, if this was a business and you had, people who were sitting on the exec, and whilst they were on the exec, basically they bankrupted the company, those people would not be allowed to continue to run that business. They'd be kicked off. And so for me personally, again, looking at this objectively, I don't understand how the ex-leader of the council who stepped down just kind of a couple of months ago, who was at the helm of this when all this was going on, how he is still able to be holding the whip, and how the local Labour Party have not actually done anything about this. I can't fathom that, because surely someone needs to be held to account, and also you need to show residents that you are contrite and actually that they have made mistakes, but that doesn't appear to be happening. So also, though, I should add that when the most recent budget was brought to council, the local Conservative Party actually supported the budget. So I know at the moment they're able to play politics with this and say Labour's bankrupted Croydon, but when the budget was presented to them, they basically pushed it through themselves. So I think there's collective responsibility, but I do think the people who were at the helm at the time, they need to go. We need clear, new, fresh people at the helm if the party wants to regain trust and to rebuild.
I think you're right. I think actually there needs to be a full clear out. I mean, I saw one Labour councillor, a Jamie Audsley, who seems to be running a one-man campaign to say he wants to get to the bottom of what happened. But he was there at the time, and there's a number of councillors who were there at the time. And it's all fine to say, we want to understand what happened, but you've had long enough. You've had reports. So, yeah, I completely agree that actually it's time for a new, fresh blood. And I don't know what the processes are that allow that, but it does remind me of a debate we once had, probably only a few months ago, about bringing experts into politics. And this is essentially the problem, isn't it? When you elect people who have no expertise, who have, the right intentions, actually they're not the right people often to be leading huge multi-million, billion-pound economies. I listened to the interview on BBC Radio London with the current leader of the council that you shared with me. And she used to work in equality and diversity, very honourable stuff. But she's not the right person to be leading a huge council. And part of this is, I think, that we do have this issue with democracy, which I completely agree with. It's very right and proper that we elect our leaders, but the risk is we do sometimes elect people who are just incompetent, and they have the right intentions, but actually an equality and diversity officer is not the right person to be choosing how to play monopoly with the public purse.
That is interesting. I mean, I think then you then have to look at the whole political system, because local democracy is about lay people standing to represent the communities in which they live and want to serve those communities. So in a way, I hear what you're saying, but isn't that then going to put a barrier preventing ordinary people from actually being part of the democratic process? You're then putting a kind of like a marker to say, unless you've got this qualification, this experience, you can't basically be a councillor. And I'm not sure if I'm quite comfortable with that. I hear what you're saying. Perhaps if you're leader of a council, or if you're actually in a situation like this where we're dealing with a multi-million pound deficit, you do need some level of expertise to help you do that. And perhaps, in this situation, maybe an expert is required to help, because it's not, you and I couldn't do it. We're just ordinary people. We're not accountants. We're not used to managing multi-million pound budgets. And although we have principles of how we, run our shopping lists at Tesco and all the rest of it, and maybe some other, basic information about how accounts operate, this is like big dollar bills. And but I don't know, part of what you're saying makes me uncomfortable, because I do think ordinary people need to be given the opportunity to represent their communities. And also, the irony is, to get more diversity in that, you need to have a open playing field, essentially.
No, so I believe that if you want to get more diversity, actually pay and attract more people, and attract people with the skills and qualifications that you need. I think you do need a complete mix. I completely agree. So there is a role in there somewhere for the current leader of the council. It's probably just not in charge of the budget and the finances. But if you actually could attract someone who's earning a good salary in the city to say, actually, why don't you come and take up a role on your local council, then you start to get a really good mix. But instead, you don't get that. Or what happens is you get people right at the top, the really, really rich, who take up political careers, because that's just something they do. They have, they just become politicians as a lifetime career. What we really want is people who have real life experience, who then say, actually, I now want to go and do some good for my community. There's a role on the local council. I run for election, I get elected, and I don't have to take a huge pay cut because I'm going to be rewarded appropriately. So I think it actually does support equality and diversity, because I think you'll end up attracting a broader range of people. For example, you might get head teachers who get to a point in their career and think, actually, I want to now go and work in politics, or people who have got to a role in the NHS. I do see that as a way of actually broadening experience and diversity of expertise.
Interesting. So what would you do now? So if you were kind of in Croydon now, what would you, if you were a resident like me, what would you like to see?
I would like to see, I think there's basic stuff like proper acknowledgement from the councillors that, what they've done is wrong. I'd like to see some resignations. I'd like to see the current leader of the council actually acknowledge her role in this, and the fact that she's been there and perhaps isn't the right person to be running this. And then I would like to see them work with the auditors in the right way, in the proper way, to bring about the order and the change needed. I'm not saying we need to revolutionize the electoral system right now for Croydon. I think Croydon needs to focus on getting its house in order, and that probably does involve someone making the decision to get rid of some of the people there. That's the only way I think you're going to get the trust that's needed. The only way you're going to convince people to continue paying their council tax and support the local party, because ultimately they're going to need to be elected again, or they're going to want to be elected again, aren't they? So part of them building trust is probably about them saying, right, let's have a proper clear out, and let's properly look at what went wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. I mean, in all consciousness, I can't see a way. I can't see a way that you can continue knowing that the person who was responsible for all this is still kind of a counsellor. They've not removed the whip from him. It's just like saying, well, he's just over there, whatever. I can't get that. I think that is number one. That needs to happen to show actually that what happened was wrong and there are consequences for those actions. But there, so far today, there have been zero. And yes, I do agree with you. I think, regardless of what happened, those people who were sitting around that cabinet with the ex-leader of the council are all culpable, regardless of what happened and the culture of the organisation and what have you. They are all culpable. And you're right. Like I say, I bring this back to the corporate setting. You can't have people who have been responsible for the failure of an organisation stay on to then try and rebuild it when something so terrible has happened. I can't accept that, really. I can't. Oh, goodness me. Well, I don't know. I think this is obviously a long haul with Croydon because of the state of the local authority and the public purse. It's really sad. And there's a renewal plan that's been looked at and what have you. But ultimately, people will suffer as a result of these bad decisions, as a result of this incompetence, as a result of this, I don't know what you call it, level of arrogance as well. There is, and ordinary people, residents, will suffer for it.
And do you know what I think is really unfortunate, especially for Labour, who's trying to rebuild itself, and is that this is the kind of behaviour, because we've talked about this in terms of the Tory party and the arrogance there and people not taking responsibility. And I feel like, actually, I don't know, I would have expected more from Labour as well. I'd just like to, just resign, or someone just sack the right people, just to show that, we learn from our mistakes. When we make mistakes, we get, we start again. And that's what I really feel needs to happen. I have one last question. What is happening with the Westfield then? Is that all tied up in this? Because,
well, yeah, I mean, I think
Westfield.
I think realistically, there is no Westfield, I don't think but I think that has been something that's been more or less in the pipeline, that it's not going to happen for some time. And it's sad because a lot of, people pinned a lot of hope and a lot of, I don't know, expectation on Westfield to kind of be the saviour of Croydon. And I always thought, how can a shopping centre, which, essentially a shopping centre, save Croydon? It can't. And so I was always uncomfortable about the fact that people were really going on and on about Westfield. It's just, people's shopping habits have changed, for goodness sake. Even before this pandemic, we did a show probably a couple of years ago about the death of the high street. And so all these trends were happening and everyone was still talking about how Westfield would save Croydon, and it was a big mistake. And that was across both parties, to be honest. I think just to kind of wrap up this conversation, obviously this is a political football for the Conservatives in Croydon, because they can use this to bash Labour. But what I want to see as a resident is this isn't going to help us. This isn't going to help our bins be emptied. This isn't going to help our streets to stay clean. This isn't going to help protect our important vital services. What I want to see now is, yes, people being held accountable and people punished, but also I want to see collaboration. I want to see councillors from across the divide working together in the interest of sorting out this problem, because ultimately playing Punch and Judy is not going to help us. We need to all come together to solve this. So that's what I want to see.
I agree with you. I think that is the right thing that's needed right now. Indeed.
Paul. Alas, anyway, let's move on. Let's turn to football. So this is well, I say it's interesting. I don't know if it is really interesting, but it's Millwall Football Club, who, interestingly, there's been a lot of history of Millwall and racism and what have you. So they had a football match just recently with Derby. Is that how you pronounce it? Derby. Anyway, they had a football match. And as what is customary now, everybody is kneeling to basically show that they are against, racial discrimination. And this happened at Millwall, except there was a backlash from some fans who were booing whilst this was taking place. They were booing about the fact that people were taking the knee. And this has been going on since June in Premier Football leagues and English football leagues, to again show their support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Interestingly, I mean, it's whatever, but interestingly, George Eustace, the environmental secretary, popped up and basically he said that taking the knee is pretty much a political movement, which is different. These are his words, which is different from most of us believe in, which is standing up for racial equality. I found that statement to be quite gaslighty, because he is basically saying that if you take the knee, you're not doing it for racial equality reasons. But that's the whole point of this thing. That's where this whole thing stemmed from. So how can it not be about racial equality? I don't get it. But I found that very, as I said, very gaslighty.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Paul?
when I saw the interview, and I was disgusted by it, to be honest. He was almost trying to deny it happens, because at first he said, "Oh, I didn't see it, so I can't comment." And then they actually played him the clip, and so he could hear the booing. And then he said, "Oh, I'm on a," I think he said, "I'm on a walkie-talkie or something. I can't quite hear it, so I can't really comment." And then he said, he made the comments that you've outlined. But I just thought, why not just say, yeah, it was racist, it's not acceptable. And there is this thing where people are trying to say that the BLM movement it's a political movement, and it's separate to racism. And I think it does go back to the confusion that there was initially when the movement, the campaign started in this country, where people were saying, well, it's all about defunding the police, or it's a Marxist movement or whatever. And I've seen people say that actually the people in the football club weren't booing because they're racist; they were booing because they're anti-Marxists. And people are now trying to use the political campaign in America and what they stand for, or part of what they stand for, to kind of undermine it in this country. And I think we really do need to be careful of that, because actually we're now having a debate about what what BLM means and stands for, rather than addressing the fact that there are racist fans and supporters at Millwall who, quite frankly, need to be arrested and prosecuted. We know the history at Millwall. We know about the hooliganism. We know about the racism. It took them 19 hours to issue a statement at Millwall to actually condemn this.
Oh, wow.
And they said the right things. Well, actually, their statement was kind of saying, "Oh, it's really unfortunate because people have prepared so hard to reopen the football ground, and now they've spoilt it. Actually, no, you should have expected this, and you should have been prepared, and you must ensure that you continue to allow players to take the knee if that's what they want." And then, we know there's only 2,000 people in that football ground. There's cameras in there. If you can see who's doing, I never understand why, if you can see who the ones who are making racist gestures, they simply aren't arrested, prosecuted, banned from football. Whatever needs to happen to them, deal with it. And that's the way we'll get that change. Don't know. It just feels to me like Millwall's almost accepting this. And I know that the fact they allowed the gesture and they gave the time, it was right and honourable. But I hope they do now completely continue to support footballers who want to take the knee.
I agree, Paul. It just saddens me that this is still a thing. And I don't know about you, but it just feels as though there's more racism now than before. despite all of this stuff, it just feels like there's more of it in the open world. You know, it just seems that we're supposed to be taking steps forwards, but actually it feels like we're taking steps backwards. And to see that, and you know, a few weeks ago we had the issues with the Sainsbury's advert and all of the backlash against that, simply because there was a black family on a TV advert. People starting to lose their minds. I'm going to say something else there. They're starting to lose their minds, all because there's a black family on an advert, for goodness sake. And just the vitriol and hatred that spews from people, it's shocking and it's horrible, and it's disgusting, really. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it really ever did get any better. It just feels like, you know, people maybe have more of an outlet to be able to say what they think. For example, Twitter, you know, we know what goes on there. And so it becomes more of a story, I guess. You know, I don't know whether we would have had the same, we would have known what people's response to Sainsbury's advert would have been a few years ago, because we wouldn't have been able to see it online. You know, it would end.
Yeah.
People might go down to the pub, but people wouldn't be rioting on the streets because of it, perhaps. But now people can collect together on social media and we can see it there and then. And, you know, so again, I was really pleased with the way Sainsbury's and the other supermarkets actually all rallied together to condemn racism. But yeah, I don't know that. I don't really think it ever went away. I think it's always surprising how people go, "Oh my God, it's I'm really shocked by this," but it's still there. Racism still exists. It's exactly why we need this movement, and exactly why it really frustrates me that it is kind of, you know, it's all meshed into this, you know, the political movement in America. Because not everyone does support the defunding the police stuff and, you know, some of their beliefs, but there is a fundamental core, you know, belief to, you know, core campaign, which is that racism is wrong and we need to tackle it.
Exactly, Paul. Exactly. Well, I don't have anything more to add to that, because what you're saying is absolutely correct. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to COVID, because COVID is still with us. But the good news is we have these vaccines now that, the Pfizer vaccine has been approved by the regulator, and that's good news. And obviously there are others in the pipeline as well. But I mean, it's really interesting that the UK was the first country to actually have an approved vaccine. I was quite surprised actually that it wasn't America, because Pfizer is an American country. So I was quite surprised that we were able to get there first. But anyway, good news in relation to that. But the problem exists with anti-vaxxers and that whole movement of people. And you know, I've seen it on WhatsApp. I've had messages sent to me on WhatsApp around various conspiracy theories around the vaccine themselves and whether or not they're safe, etc., etc. I won't go into the details, but let's just say anti-vaxxers and various theories. So to help combat that, of the government working with celebrities / influencers to essentially show people that the vaccine is safe. Because I think really that there's been so much damage done with the government and the trust between the public, that many people, even, you know, rational people who would probably think, okay, the vaccine's safe, wouldn't trust words that come out of certain ministers' mouths. And so now we're having to look at how can we bridge that gap between trust and so that people can actually get vaccines. So what do you think of this whole idea of working with celebs to help do that?
I think it's probably absolutely essential that we do it. I think it's part of it will be a big part of the campaign, I think, to convince people to that the vaccine's safe and that they need to take it. You know, I was when I was reading about this, trust in vaccines was around 7%, according to a survey in the UK. But by June, the number of people who don't trust vaccines had gone up to 11% from 7%, and then in July it was 14%. So, you know,
Wow.
distrust is increasing. And I think you're right. It is down to this government's mishandling throughout, over the last few weeks and months, we have seen such scandalous mishandling of track and trace, promising that we're going to have, all, hospitals built, promising all sorts of promises broken. So I think there is the huge anti-vax movement, which is significant, but I think there's also people who just don't actually believe that it's going to happen. I didn't trust it was going to happen. Even when I saw Matt Hancock's smug face, making the announcement, I still didn't believe it. I still don't believe it's going to happen next week. That's the level of distrust that we have. I just think then, so we probably will need, in the same way as we needed experts, standing there with Boris and with the other idiot ministers to explain things, we probably do need some celebrities to just have the vaccine and to show us that it's okay, because they are they're influential. If we were running a commercial campaign, in PR or marketing, we would be thinking, who can we use to help convince people? And there are so many celebrities over the last few weeks and months who are just breaking the rules. Rita Ora has just had to apologize for the second time, getting on her private jet, going on for her big party. And you just think, what is wrong with you? You're an idiot. But unfortunately, people do listen and watch and copy people like her. So hopefully we'll get some people on the other side who can put out the right messages, show that the vaccine's safe, and take us all on the journey towards immunization.
I like that, Paul. That was a very convincing effort there. I like that. So who would, on that note then, who would convince you celebrity-wise? Let's think of the various celebrities. For me, probably someone from EastEnders, but who would... yeah, or Phil, like down the arches, give me the jab. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. So I don't know, who would it be for you? Who would convince you to take the jab if you needed?
It's really interesting because I think it was on the front of the Mirror where they had the pictures of the various national treasures that have been identified. And it all seems to be people of a certain age, and all white, over 40, over 50.
I think over 60 they were, Paul.
Yeah. All there who apparently had been, recruited, or the plan was to recruit them. I did see that there was talk of recruiting people like Marcus Rashford, who's done amazing things over the last year. And he would probably help convince people. And then people like, the royal family, I saw there was talk of seeing if one of them or a few of them would do something. But, maybe Meghan, she'd convince me. If Meghan took the jab, I'd say, yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
Meghan or Harry and Meghan, both of them together?
Yeah, probably both of them together, yeah. If they both took the jab, I think that would convince me. And then there'll be, we've talked about this before, people on both sides, aren't there? Because then on the other side, it'll be Kate and Will's supporters who would need to see them take it as well. No doubt. Actually, we were talking about racism earlier. If Meghan took the jab, it probably convinced people that it's probably wrong and we must all not take it. So it does show you the importance of finding the right people, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right.
Community leaders, religious leaders have also been recruited, because those are the people that some communities will listen to. But yeah, for you, who would need to convince you then? So it would be your EastEnders soap stars.
Well, that's probably a bit of a joke, but I don't know. I mean, out of all the scientists and what have you, I like JVT.
Professor JVT,
I think. Sorry, Professor JVT. I think he seems so genuine when he talks. He just tells it how it is, regardless of whether or not Boris Johnson wants him to say anything or not. He just tells it how it is, and so I think he would be someone that I would, trust, if you like. I mean, I think for younger people, and interesting because obviously younger people are in the higher risk category. But I was listening to LBC last night, and a young person called in and said that Molly May from Love Island would basically convince them to take it, because I think she's done other things as well when she had a mole on her leg, and she basically spoke about that and the whole process of getting it removed. So it's interesting. Different people will have different influencers that influence them.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing that the government is thinking like this, because I do think it won't be as straightforward as we'd like it to be, or as straightforward as we think it will be. The fact that we have a vaccine is brilliant news, but now it's about getting people to actually take it, as well as the logistics of getting it to people, but it's actually convincing people to take it as well, particularly the people who are anti-vaxxers or the people who have doubts.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I saw another poll out today that said 57% of people do not trust this government on this. So we can't trust the government,
Yeah.
you know. How are we going to get through this? You know, I don't know if you saw the pictures of what London was like yesterday. You know, people are not following the rules. People are out there crowding, not wearing their masks. So already we're seeing you know, the rules being thrown out the window. And I just hope that people don't think, well, the vaccine's coming, so we can start to let our guard down. You know,
That's the
it's
thing.
important that people continue to listen and, you know, don't do the likes of Rita Ora, but, you know, follow Professor JVT.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And I do fear for, obviously, Christmas. There's been some sort of reprieve around Christmas, and again, we won't see the impacts of that for a few weeks afterwards. So, you know, it's a bit worrying to see. And I know people have their various things about Christmas and that we should be released and what have you, but it is released. It is a worry as to what impact that will have, because, you know, the figures have been going down. We've been kind of going down. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen over Christmas and the New Year. And also, obviously, Boris Johnson, there's political pressure that he's feeling from his backbenchers as well. But in situations like this, I don't know, decisions almost need to be, this is a thing, taken out of the whole political side of things. I think it should all be science led. That's what we were supposed to be doing, following the science.
Yeah.
That was what the principle was from the outset. But obviously that's all gone to pot because sometimes we're following the money.
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, they seem to be a bit more honest about that now, that they are trying to balance the economic decisions and the political decisions, and you know, and the health of the country. But I think I'm on your side that we should be putting health ahead of money and economy,
wealth,
and and we've seen other countries do that, and we've seen other countries manage to, you know, get the R rate down. You know, which is why I was really disappointed when I saw the Labour Mayor of London this weekend in Oxford Street and encouraging people to go shopping, saying that, you know, the shops are going to die if we don't go shopping. And he's absolutely right. You know, shops will go out of business, but people are also going to die. And, you know, I just feel like you've got to get the balance right, or not, you know, confusing messages, because he's actually been quite consistent, I think, up till now in terms of saying to avoid London. But now he's launched all these, you know, shopping, you know, Saturdays, everyone must go, and it's all going to be pedestrianized and whatever, and roads are going to be closed so that people can crowd and shop. It's foolishness.
It is. Well, I'll be just chatting to Jeff Bezos online, and that's how it's going to be for me, I'm afraid. Helping to build his next swimming pool.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Well, well, that has been an interesting chat, Paul. We've had a few nuggets there. For everyone who's listening or watching us, we are going to be at the BME Pros Winter Series event on Friday, the 11th of December. Got that right. And we'll be doing a live show, News Bants. So we're really looking forward to that. So if you've got tickets, then, you know, you'll be able to see us. But we're really looking forward to our first ever live show. So look out for stuff with us on Twitter at News Bants. As per usual, if you are leaving a comment, please do leave a comment. We love comments and reviews, and share with your friends, family, and anyone else who loves podcasts. And we're also on other networks, which Paul will tell you about.
Yep, we're also on Instagram at News Bants.
Great. Well, until next time, thank you for listening and watching, and we shall see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.